This video, the middle-aged nerds discuss spoilers from books they read decades ago. Do you really need a spoiler alert? Do you really?
Hey, I'm Glenn the Geeky Hippie.
And I'm Bill, also known as Matt Stagger, and welcome to Non-Terrestrial Half-Life. And today we are going over the test of the twins. And joining us again is Jenn, Keeper of the Chronicles. Welcome back.
Hello, hello. It's always a pleasure to be here talking about Dragonlance. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Always glad to have you. Always.
Thank you.
Yeah, this one is The Test of the Twins, the third in the Dragonlance Legends books by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman. Or Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weis, as I like to say. This came out in, I believe, 1986, published by TSR, who years before they were bought by Wizards of the Coast. What do you guys think of this book in general?
I was happy that they wrapped it up in a way that I was okay with, but man, that ending just freaking lanced me, especially because I've talked up to this point who my favorite character is, and I was like, well, right. Of course he wasn't going to, spoilers, this is what we're doing, going to really make it. But at the same time, I was like, Krystania going blind, so many things that happen. It gave you a payoff that you had been waiting for, but in a way that you did not think was going to happen. So I liked it. I was wrecked, though. Major wrecked when I first read this.
I felt justified in my disdain towards Raceland for most of the book. And by the end, I'm like, okay, I can accept this. So, but yeah, the payoff was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed it. I think it's the best of the three. I think, by far. I enjoyed it the most. Actually, so far, I'd say it's the best of the six that we've been rereading with Dragonlance. We'll see how I feel about Dragons of Summer Flame when I reread that soon for the next episode.
Oh, yeah, that's
going to be interesting. That's going to be fun. So do you remember when you first read this book?
No.
Do you remember when you first read this?
I don't remember the first time. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I had to have been 15 or 16, just like the other three.
Yeah, me too.
Because I read them back to back to back.
Me too.
In high school at some point, having to hide them behind the math textbook in class, so that I could continue to read. Kids would pick on me because I was reading fantasy stuff. Aww. Back when fantasy wasn't cool. Yeah, I'm that old. Fantasy wasn't cool when I was in high school. Neither was science fiction or comic books. So I'm a little baffled at the world we live in today because all my stuff is cool. And I'm just like, how did this happen?
I'm reveling in it as opposed to being baffled by it,
I try to revel, but it still baffles me.
Everything that made me a geeky nerd in high school now makes me cool. So I will accept it.
How old were you when you read this, Bill? Same age as me?
Yeah. Pretty much. My only thing I remember, honestly, is the ending. What happens particularly to Raceland. Other than that, I did not remember a whole lot. I forgot all about the other parts coming in, Tanis and everything else. I basically have forgotten all about that. So it was kind of a pleasant surprise.
I remember Tanis stealing that bracelet, that magic protection bracelet.
Yeah.
From Tanis. Tass stealing it from Tanis.
Yeah.
I think I might have said Tanis stealing.
You did.
I meant Tass stealing it from Tanis. The T names. That's supposedly a golden rule of writing. You don't name multiple characters with the same first letter. But they broke that.
Oh, somebody told that Robert Jordan with the S names and
yeah.
or George R. Martin, who just has multiple characters with the exact same name.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a bunch of Roberts and Neds and Edwards and Brands, millions of Brands.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jen, do you have any memories of reading the first time at all?
So I remember, I had to be around your age as well. I was going to say that. And I just remember sitting, I remember there being a parallel because at the time I was reading not about the guy, I forget his name, but the one Greek punishment where the guy was rolling the ball up the hill. Not that one.
Sisyphus.
Yeah. But there was a guy, and it reminded me also of the artwork at the time of Raceland Chained. I was comparing it in my mind to
Prometheus?
the guy that had the birds rip out his stomach.
Yeah, Prometheus.
Yeah, Prometheus.
Yes,
The one
and
who
I
gave
was
fire to mankind.
yes, and I was thinking about how that was like a parallel to kind of like Raceland's punishment in a little bit in some ways, especially with the illustration. So I was like, okay, is that what's going to go on here? I just remembered that kind of because I was reading that in school at the time. So I kind of remember that a little bit. Else I just, for some reason, I just kept like really focusing on like after he passed and like the last few pages where like people were just trying to like Chrysania was like trying to lead people and she was blind and the tiger and everything. And I was just like, I just can't believe like how this can go on. And then knowing that there were more books after that, I'm like, what are they going to do? Like, you know what I mean? So I just remember feeling like all these people that had helped me are either gone or they're older or they're no longer adventuring, or like I just felt like I'd lost a part of my family. That's really what I felt like. Not book specifics, just
Yeah,
That's why
just
I was
that-
so disappointed
That
with so many
feeling of
those-
loss.
yeah.
I greedily and hungrily went through so many of the other Dragonlance books, and I was disappointed that so few of them were about our heroes of the Lance. About our main characters from that series.
Me too.
And at the time, because that's who I wanted. That's who I wanted to read more with.
Yeah.
And there was just at the time I was reading, there was only a couple of books with those characters. So I was really disappointed with the rest of the Dragonlance. But believe me, I think I read more Dragonlance than any other setting for D&D. And that includes over the Forgotten Realms stuff, which I really liked.
Me too.
Yeah, I really got into the Forgotten Realms stuff. I mean,
Me too.
really. So I fell down
Had either of you played
Driz
Dragonlance?
rabbit hole.
No, in fact, it wasn't until later that I realized that they were computer games that were like Commodore games that were along with these books as well. But no, I didn't play. I think you're talking about the TTRPG.
Yeah, there was it's a complete setting for the books were basically advertisements, promotionals for the game setting, the D&D setting that they created. It was a new setting. They already had Greyhawk, which was basically the default original setting for D&D. And then there was Forgotten Realms that they were doing, but they wanted to create something brand new. And so they created Dragonlance.
Well, they just did a release of a Dragonlance module for D&D, and you can now play Kinder as a character. So
in regular D&D, nice.
Yep,
that's cool.
That's now a character class.
I played a paladin from a Forgotten Realms setting who was stuck on Dragon Mountain with a Kender in our party, and that's Stern Brightblade had it hard, but a paladin has it even harder because a paladin has to be careful what they do, what they say.
Oh yeah,
so that they don't break their
fall from grace.
They don't break their fall from grace. So you can't really mete out any serious punishment on stupid little Kender. God, I love Kender. Raceland's still your favorite character throughout this book?
What do you want me to say? It's almost like a trick question. Yes, I was just but it was, looking back, and I'm going to make a pun here, through the hourglass of time, when I was a kid, that was just, it was a Raceland. Okay, please don't laugh. Was kind of one of my first childhood crushes. I actually had a crush on Raceland. So I was just like bonded to him emotionally as I read him on the page. So it was doomed from the start. Of course, I was going to enjoy Raceland the most. So reader's bias. It was reader bias.
I had a crush on the bad girl. I kind of like Kitiara.
A lot of people did. A lot of people,
especially with some of the Dragonlance artwork of her. She just, yeah. I also think I had a crush on Goldmoon, but
Yeah, I had a crush on Goldmoon, but I mean, Jen, you went full Chris Ania there on Raceland
Yeah.
I
as a
did.
teen.
So it was kind of okay. Let me tell you, it was kind of weird reading these books because feeling that tension between them, between a character I was crushing on, I was like, ooh, like, you know what I mean? So those parts really, those beats really hit me, you know? And I was like, why are you walking away from her when she approached him in the abyss and everything? Like, I'm like, she's just leaving her there. Like, you know, so that was kind of my reaction to it.
He said he would do it, and he
Did.
damn well
He
did it.
absolutely did
And
it,
he
didn't
did
he? I'm like, hey, at least he didn't lie. I mean, she knew ahead of time. So
Yeah.
yeah, she did.
Was there anything that you had forgotten that surprised you on this reread?
Oh my God. So you know what? There was a major shift that I didn't even realize until looking back. When you first read the Chronicles books, even though, of course, I like Raceland, you're following a lot of what Tanis is doing. And these books, he's just very much a background figure. And like even the whole thing about him fighting Soth and all that and stuff. And I was just like, I just wasn't really invested in what he had going on, like almost at all. It was they really did shift it to where you really cared about what Caramon and Raceland and Taos were doing, and that was kind of pretty much about it. So even though I was sad to see certain people that were no longer with us, at the same time, it was like, what a tonal shift for me in these books. I didn't even realize it until later when I went back, and I was like, oh yeah, they did this intentionally. So
I think this trilogy is at the same time more serious, but also funnier. Because there are quite a few comedic moments, mostly revolving around Tasselhoff, of course.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, and any gully dwarf you might have with him.
That was awesome.
They are, I mean, just the whole nature of the story in the Legends is a lot more serious than what you got. I mean, the stakes are higher too, but at times it doesn't feel like the stakes are really that high. You know, it doesn't feel like, intellectually, at least I knew intellectually that all of the world was in trouble with this trilogy. But I felt that the danger to the world in the Chronicles trilogy was more imminent, felt more imminent because it was happening. You know, people were already being killed and being made, enslaved and having their villages burned, being chased out of their homes. You know, so we saw it in Chronicles, but we didn't actually see any of the, other than when Tass and Caramon went into the future, we didn't really see the world devastated or being devastated. It was always just something on the horizon, not something actively happening in the world.
Well, that's what sort of sent the imperative to stop Raceland for me was when they went to the future and, they're basically a dead planet and there's no stars in the sky except for Racelands. And that's it.
Yeah.
And I mean, that set the, we got to fix this. Otherwise, we're all dead and everything is dead.
And that was what, 2/3 of the way through book 3? Halfway through book 3 when they went to the future. So, seeing the results of what Raceland was trying to do was not something we had for most of the trilogy. So it was, like I said, it was always on the horizon. It was always coming, but it wasn't already, you weren't already seeing people have their lives ended or devastated. And that's why I thought Chronicles felt more imminent, like it had bigger stakes because it was happening. Now, granted, I mean, in a literal sense, it was bigger stakes in this trilogy, but it didn't feel bigger. Does that make sense? I knew it was bigger, but it didn't feel like it was.
The first 2 books are basically about trying to save Raceland's soul. And then you get to the future and you realize there is no saving his soul at all. And it becomes, we need to save everything.
Yeah, because he'll kill everything, the planet, everything. That was a very chilling moment when he was just kind of walking around on that barren planet, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was just kind of like chilling. I was like, okay, like, you know what I mean?
And then finding his own body.
Yeah, I don't know if I can ask you guys this question. Can I guess ask the
Go
question
ahead.
Yeah,
asker something? I'm sorry, I
absolutely.
don't mean to be
Always.
turning on its head.
No, it's fine.
How did this is also towards Glenn, but I think you as well, Bill. But how did you feel when Soth came to take Chrysania, or not Chrysania, Kidiara's body? How did you feel about that situation? Do you feel like, what was the
Happy.
emotions going on about that? Do you think she
I was
deserved it, or do you
happy.
think it was
I-
too harsh, or what do you
I
think? What do
hate
you
to
think?
admit
What do you
it.
think?
I hate to admit it as the geeky hippie, but just desserts.
Really, you both
Probably.
agree on just desserts. I was wondering how you would
I
feel.
mean, like I
That's
said, I had
eternity,
a
fam.
crush on her, but she was wicked.
She was.
She was a wicked motherfucker.
Not
Sorry,
just
you have to
that,
beat that, Bill.
but she straight up used him for her own means and for him to turn it around, and now she's going to be used for his means for the rest of existence.
Yeah.
That's
I
forever,
mean, I
fam.
I do
I
feel
mean,
bad for anybody stuck under his dominion, but she asked for it.
yeah,
She
I
asked
mean,
for it.
Yeah.
And so did his legion. His legion asked for it. And the
So-
Banshee.
I was okay with it. And I'm like, that's kind of fitting. So I am okay with it. What
Okay.
surprised me the most was Delamar.
I like
he's-
Delamar.
I happen to really like Delamar.
well, he was very wishy-washy for me the first two books. I'm like, I
He
can't
was.
tell which side he's going to be on. And this
was.
one, he seemed to solidify into, okay, this is what's right. I can still be the Black Robes, but still do the right thing, that
The
needs to be
necessary
done.
thing.
I liked him a lot more in this book than I have in the previous books. So
Yeah.
that
He's the only
surprised me.
black robe I like. He's
Yeah,
the only
me too.
black robe I like.
Me too.
I do think Fistandandalus has a great name, but that's about it.
Yeah, he's got the
Oh, yeah,
coolest
man, he
name
was
ever.
horrible.
Yeah.
The Fistandandalus, that's just one of those great names in fantasy, in my opinion. How do you feel about Caramon? Wow, big burly guy,
Well,
I think Perrin.
There you
We one
go.
time
That makes sense.
Slip.
That's okay.
What do you guys think about Caramon's journey in this trilogy, and especially in this book?
Here's the thing I think about Caramon is I think he can appreciate more, especially because how you pick up and where he was kind of in the first book was just, oh my God. And we have this whole character glow up. I think he's going to be a better father. I think he's going to be a better husband. I think he's going to be a better leader for Solace, because it's pretty much him at the end, like kind of like leading Solace, like him and Tika together. Yeah. It's like their situation, right? So I really think that, I mean, it sucks to have to go through everything he had to, but now he's like mentally, physically, emotionally, he needed to go through all those trials in order to be the leader that he was always supposed to be. And now I think he's set until he dies. So, yeah.
For me, I look at how he treated Toss in the first book to how he treats Toss at the end of the book. And that shift you can see there, it was the most visible to me. I'm really glad he sort of got his freedom from his own self-imposed need to, do everything for his brother, including die for him, basically.
Yeah.
And at the end, he's a free man. He's actually free from that responsibility. Granted, it was one he put on himself, and went through a lot to get out of it. But I'm glad he did. And the person he is at the end is a better person. So I think it was worth it.
If there's any character growth in the Dragonlance Chronicles and Legends in those 6 books, it's Caramon.
I agree.
By far.
Oh, yeah.
Caramon grows so much. He hits rock bottom and comes back from that. He ends up leading an army, being the leader of an army, which reading Chronicles, you never would have guessed. Reading Time of the Twins, the first book in the trilogy, I never would have guessed that the second book, he'd be the leader of an army. The only other character that seems to have had any, Raistlin obviously had some character growth there at the end. But Tasselhoff. Tasselhoff is ready to settle down. He's still fairly young. He no longer has the wanderlust like he used to.
Mm-hmm.
And Tass has become responsible. And you know, and it's just in his mind, he's responsible. Well, he's responsible.
The Kinder wave sings.
Yeah.
He's way more responsible than any other Kender in the world. I'm pretty sure of that.
I'll give you that.
You know, he's just, I don't know. I think he had some great growth too.
Well, keep in mind, he's talking about retiring from adventuring and everything. At the same time, his hand is packing all the maps and looking at that new city. So
yeah.
See, that's the thing with Kender. They don't know what their hands are doing. Unless they're actually thinking about their hands. The hands have a mind of their own.
Mm-hmm.
That's how things fall into pouches.
Uncle Finder, is that the guy that Taz keeps talking about? It? Trap Finder. That's right. I keep forgetting the name, but yeah, I know what we're talking about. He reminds me of like Lenny from Wheel of Time, but like the Kinder figure at the same time. He reminds the Lenny for Kinders. Like I kind of think of that. Anyway, I just had to throw that in there. Sorry.
The Kender
you're 100% right.
The Kender I adventured with had a great name. His name was Grover Eye Poker.
Oh my God. I am absolutely happier as a person that you told me that. That brings me literal joy. Thank you.
Little Kender, we ended up back in Forgotten Realms setting at Waterdeep to my family's mansion. And he grabbed the family shield off the wall and was sledding down the stairs on the shield.
Oh my God.
And then running back up to the top and doing it again.
Okay. Did you come up with that name, or did like somebody?
No, that wasn't. That was one of the other guys in the party. I don't even remember.
Incredible. Yeah. I'm glad.
If I get to play as a Kender in a campaign for that, I am straight up. Like I'm going to call myself Syntax Eye Poker.
That's incredible.
Syntax Eye Poker.
That's great. That's so funny. Oh, I'm glad. I'm better as a person for it that you told me that. That's great.
See the wonder of Kender? Kender are wonderful.
Mm-hmm. No, I like Kender.
I think that's the best thing in Dragonlance was the Kender. You know, the idea of bringing Kender everywhere else. I would play a Kender in any setting, except Dark Sun. That would just be bad.
You know, what's one race that intrigues me in a Dragonlance setting more than any others is the Hill Dwarf versus the Mountain Dwarf situation going on they have there. And the Hill Dwarfs actually seem like, I know Flint was his standout, but I would be very curious to see what the difference is there, because in dwarves in most other settings, they're like dwarves, and there's of course different families and stuff, but like having that differentiation there, it kind of reminds me of like lowland Scottish versus highland Scottish thing that had going on for years. That kind of reminds me of that. So I would be interested in seeing that.
Am I the only one who thinks that when you're listening to an audiobook or watching a movie based on some fantasy setting with dwarves, that the dwarves should have Scottish accents?
Yes, I think that too.
Okay.
I think we've seen that in a lot of film and TV and stuff, though. I think it's kind of been imprinted. I think
they have Scottish type names in Raymond E. Feist's Riftwar Saga.
Dubal and Locke. Yes, they do.
Yeah, so they're very Scottish named in that.
Mm-hmm.
But the audiobook didn't quite give them a Scottish accent. But there have been other ones. The Witcher stuff. The dwarves do have some form of Scottish accent going on.
They do.
Very Scottish.
In the game, even, yes.
In the game, even.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it seems instinctual to me that's how they would talk. Maybe I've read so much Feist and that just embedded itself.
I think, in a lot of movies and stuff, they've always traditionally had that sort of accent until Gimli. I mean, he's the only one I can think of that doesn't have a straight up Scottish accent.
He's more Welsh trying to do Scottish.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's I believe John Rhys Davies is Welsh.
Yeah.
I think.
I like everything about this movie.
He
Same
might
with
have
it.
been. I still think Dragonlance shouldn't be movies. We need a 6-season TV series on a big streamer, with like serious budget. And I think doing Chronicles 1 through 3 and Legends 1 through 3, and maybe tacking on Dragons of Summer Flame. I really don't remember that one because I've only read it the one time. But
It's a lot.
I remember
6,
it was pretty grim, actually.
I was about to
Yeah, I
say
remember-
it's a
I
very
remember one
big
thing at the end.
grow up. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember one thing at the end that brought me to tears. But yeah, I definitely would love to see these made into put on screen, live action, preferably. I'd settle for animation as long as they do it well.
Yeah, we're not
And
going to
like-
talk about yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
We are not going to discuss the Dragonlance animated movie.
I was told not to watch it. I was told.
Yeah,
I watched it anyways.
I watched it anyways too.
I
Back when
had
it came
to.
out.
I still say Lewis Tan. I just want to see Lewis Tan as Tannis. I
I can
think
see
he
that.
would be great.
Mhm.
I think he would be great as Tannis. Give him a little beard.
Well, Joe Manganiello, is that how you say it? We're looking at you.
As
There you go.
for as Goldmoon's husband.
Riverwind.
Well, actually, he's been pushing for a Dragonlance
Oh, yeah.
series.
I'm
Very
not
much.
surprised. He's a big D&D nerd.
And he's a big Dragonlance fan too.
Yeah, if you check
Apparently.
his YouTube page, he shows off. He has a huge sort of miniature of the Last Inn at Solace.
Nice.
Nice.
Really beautiful. I mean, he very much loves Dragonlance, and he has been pushing for an undisclosed D&D property
Yeah.
to become a TV show. So rumor has
That
it
could
it's
be awesome.
Dragonlance. So
He would be awesome
Joe
as Riverwind.
Manganiello. So
That's cool. You know what?
He's a huge beast of a man that makes him either that or Sturm. I could see him playing Sturm.
I could see him playing Sturm. I have the leaves of the End of the Last Home, the book of the recipes.
Nice.
I might consider doing like a YouTube of like actually making the dragon. I never considered that until just this moment. That'll be interesting. Anyway,
do they have honey cakes?
Possibly.
they have Otik spiced potatoes. That's why I got it. I looked at that first, and then
Nice.
actually they have a lot of art, but they also have like anecdotes of like different stuff that happens too, like characters just talking about like being in the end and stuff like that, and what Tika would used to do.
I've got a friend who
I don't
in the
know if
next
they
year
have
or two
honey cakes.
is going to
but
be
of course,
starting a YouTube
that's
channel.
Wheel of Time. Go ahead, I'm listening.
I've got a friend who in the next year or two here, when he moves back to Saginaw, he's going to be starting a YouTube channel all about cooking.
Cool.
He's never going to nothing but his hands are ever going to show up on camera because he's camera averse, but he wants to do a cooking show on YouTube.
Please tell
And
me
fantasy,
his chef name is going to be Phalanges.
That's
I
great.
don't know that. I'll talk to him about that.
Phalanges.
And he'll just start it with
do
jazz
think
hands.
at some point he's going to want to do stuff from different fantasy and science fiction books, recipes from there, try those out. But yeah, we're going to be setting up a studio at his house, and that's where I'm going to be filming this from now on.
If you
won't
give
be at
me
my
just a
house.
moment, I can go up and grab it. It's right across the room.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
Yeah.
I can show the camera. Hold
Yeah.
on.
we got
It will
time.
take like 30 seconds. It's over there. Just got to get the other side. Hold on.
All right.
And
Who
due to the
would you-
magic
we
of
could-
editing, we can do
Yes.
it now.
Nice.
And it has
I've seen that, I think, but I've never picked it up.
Yeah, me either.
it has
I don't think I've seen it.
songs they sing.
Oh,
hold on.
cool.
A wedding
can't really
gift.
Leaves of the Last. What's it called again?
Hold on. It has different stories. There's some drawing. Hold on. I don't know if you can. It will show. There's
Yep, we got it.
drawings. All sorts of different stuff.
Show me the
Paul
cover
and
again.
Esty hymns. Like different kind of like lore, like different kind of drinks you can make.
Ooh,
Oh,
drinks.
cool.
It's kind of thick. It's got a lot of
Show me
stuff.
the cover. Show me the cover again. Show me
Sorry.
please.
I'll hold it. I'll be very still.
Okay, I got it. I just wanted to do a screenshot. I had forgotten about that book. I've got the
Yeah, I
artwork
didn't
of the
know about it.
Dragonlance, and I've got the artwork of Dragonlance Chronicles. I've got the Atlas of Krynn, or whatever it's called, somewhere in hard copy. I had a bunch of books for Dragonlance stuff. That's where this artwork comes from. As a matter of fact, that triptych there is straight out of the one book that I've got. It's in there too.
My most prized Dragonlance possession, other than the annotated chronicles, that's just personal, but like I think the one that was the most rare is so they had some rarer books that they did, and the not in the chronicles, but it was the annotations of Gilthanus. Like Gilthanus had a book before he met the dragon. I forget her name, the silver dragon that he fell in love with. I forget. Silvara. Yes. Sylvia or something like that. He actually had tales of like when he was like out doing journeys in ships and that sort of thing. And it's actually it's a very rare book, and I found it at a used bookstore, and I was like, they didn't know what they had. It was one of those things that it was like $2.50, and I was like, because it had been out of print. Like they only made a certain amount, and that was like gone. I was like, oh hell yeah, it's still out of print. So I found it. It's used, obviously, because I got it at a used bookstore, but it's in pretty good condition. I'm like, all right, cool.
Always find cool stuff at a used bookstore.
Yeah.
I got my first edition of Stephen King's The Gunslinger, first edition hardcover. I bought it for $2.50.
Nice, yeah.
Which is insane.
That was the price. Wow. That is awesome. They didn't know what they had. You did good.
I didn't know what it was worth. I just knew I wanted it. Mm-hmm. And then I came home and looked it up and went, wow. To be fair, I have gone in there ever since then, and I have bought a ton of books from them. So I figure that makes up for it a little bit. But
so
yeah.
What life experiences, or in what ways has your life experiences changed your perspective on the story from when you read it as a teen, basically?
What people using each other really means, and it's not the same thing as love, like Soth and like we just talked about. Obviously the Crysania and Raceland is the big glaring one, but also like with Kitiara and like you said, Soth using each other kind of. Also, I appreciate the struggles that Caramon went through more, right? Because it's like we talked about his insane growth and glow up. When you're like 15, you don't really like understand all of the changes that someone is really going through on the inside and outside of that. I'm just like, okay, yeah, well, he got a hold of some men and he realized what he was about. I mean, obviously it was a little bit deeper than that, but it really did make me appreciate that more. And the low points, the sad points, Raceland realizing what he would do with creation, like that realization hitting him, I understood the depth of that more. Obviously, I got it when I was a kid, but just the emotional lows, the low tones were more. I could plumb that.
I think I got Caramon's story a lot better this time around, a lot older. I've seen people hit rock bottom. You could say I probably have hit rock bottom once or twice. But seeing, I could sympathize more, empathize more with Caramon when he was fat Thor Caramon for a while there. Mm-hmm. And I could understand that. It does make me wonder if the guys who wrote Avengers Endgame read the Dragonlance Legends. Making Thor fat. It just makes me think. It made me think of Caramon. Or reading Caramon made me think of fat Thor all the time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I've seen people go through that.
Yeah.
But for me, I think being a little older, I now know what toxic codependency looks like a little better. So I can recognize it a lot earlier in the series.
Yeah.
And, what Raceland and Caramon have is just toxic.
Yeah.
I mean, from the word go, it's pretty toxic.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
That's what I appreciate about the twins on the other show we're doing. The twins that we do over there in Children of Dune. That's a much better relationship between twins than what these two.
Oh yeah.
This is one of the worst relationships, as you said, codependency, toxic codependency. It's just,
Yeah.
and the best thing Caramon did was breaking away from her. The strongest thing he did was breaking that dependency.
Yep.
It was the hardest thing he could do, and he managed to do it. But I think Race really forced his hand on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all existence. But I think seeing the corpse of himself and his wife, really sort of put it in perspective over, okay, I have been choosing him over my wife and everything else around me for so long, and this is the result. So
Yeah.
I really wish we'd gotten that whole sequence more from Caramon's POV instead of Tass's.
Yeah.
Because it was supposed to be a grim, horrible setting and experience finding those bodies. But everything to Tass's tone, or Tass's POV, has a different tone. Tonally, it was wrong for that sequence, I think.
You think there was an intentional choice for a younger reader?
It might have been.
I do. Given the time frame these were written in, there wasn't a whole lot of fantasy that was going that dark. That much darkness wasn't popular at the time.
Right.
So
Because
I could see them shying away from his POV on looking at his own corpse and the corpse of his dead wife, thinking, okay, this might be a little too dark, especially given younger readers.
See, if these books came out today, they would probably be YA. They would probably be labeled YA fantasy.
I think the first three in Chronicles, absolutely. These not so much.
You don't think so?
No,
even with the preponderance of Tasselhoff POVs.
No, because I mean, it's kind of like Dobby and Harry Potter, and they grow up as the books go along. And I feel like Dragonlance, basically did it first. These characters grow up, things get darker because, you face a lot more as you grow. So yeah, I think as it goes along, it wouldn't necessarily, especially these three, are much darker in tone than the Chronicles.
Definitely. Even though we get more Tasselhoff POVs than we did in the Chronicles.
Even Tasselhoff feels heavier, moodier.
At times,
more careful. That's the closest you can say to that.
Thoughtful, maybe.
Yeah, he seems to grow a little emotionally to the point where he says he has trouble talking to other Kinders now.
That's a good point. He does. It's a hard time. That's right. He can't really communicate that well on the same level with humans yet, but at the same time he does. But it's not the same as with the Kinder. But yeah, like the Kinders, he's different. There's not really a place for him. So yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Well, you got to think Tasselhoff's ideal of a critical situation is so much beyond what any other Kinder would think of as a critical situation.
Yeah,
right.
Like Taz understands the depth of like what is actually really big time serious. Yeah, that's true.
He's like a kid who grew up. Yeah, he's still very kid-like though.
Yeah,
you still feel like you want to protect him.
Yeah,
at least I do. But he is also my favorite Dragonlance character still. So except maybe Fizzban. I kind of like Fizzban when Fizzban's around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like the merry Gandalf. He's like the Gandalf that's happy and good and
forgetful.
Silly.
He's the absent-minded. He's the absent-minded Gandalf.
Less grumpy.
Gandalf is pretty silly, actually. Gandalf really is pretty silly, but
yeah, he can be. Yeah.
Especially and he can get grumpy.
I think that's more of the Hobbit influence on him. I think if Gandalf hadn't been around the Hobbits for so long, he may be a little bit different. But yeah, I agree with that. Which again is maybe the version of Kinder. So there you go. Maybe that was the whole thing of Fizzben being friends with Kinder was a throwback to Gandalf being friends with a Hobbit.
Kinder really do fit the role of halflings, but in Dragonlance. It just, they have more of a focus on being, they're almost all automatically thief class. Not all halfling characters are going to be thieves, but every Kinder has a problem with not picking up stuff. And it's like, whoop, Put it in my pouch. Don't even think about it.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, he left his mouse there. I better hold on to it for him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they're so innocent about it. And I don't know. I adore Kender. They're my favorite
Yeah,
class of characters.
they don't
in the
do
series.
anything with malice.
No.
You know,
Right.
it's done, but it's not done with malice. So
Yeah.
Right. Now, granted, there might be an evil Kender out there.
That
And
would be
that
one I wouldn't want to mess with. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that.
I love him already. I don't know who he is, but I love him.
I would be way more scared of him than I would like an evil sorcerer, because I know what that evil sorcerer is plotting. If you put him in the room with an evil Kender, I am actually terrified.
You never know
I would be like,
what's going to happen.
I know. That's the thing.
Can you imagine if
Can't
that
even
evil
talk to
Kender
that.
was a sorcerer?
No, I would be very scared. I would be very scared.
The idea of a Kender sorcerer alone is scary.
A
I don't even know if they
black-robed
can do
Kender.
magic. But yeah, imagine if it was a black robe Kender.
Oh man,
That's
like the things he
horrible.
would have to do to get to that. I wouldn't even know.
We'd be opening that gate right there and being like, "Come, Raceland, come, Techiesis, help! We
Hell,
need your
yeah.
help."
Like the devil,
Yeah.
you know. I'd rather deal with something that I know is like, all right, I can understand that kind of evil. That's something else. Don't mess with that. Pure chaos.
Are there any elements, of this book that sort of didn't age well or clash with the way things are in society today? At least for you.
For me, I'll still point out it's not as heavy in this book, but the disdain towards gully dwarfs and Kender.
Mhm.
They are starting to listen and trust Tasselhoff more, and apparently the Church of Paladin, or Paladin, as the narrator I listened to said, Paladin's church, even had Kender in it. But yeah, just the whole idea that, and I've brought it up before, that everybody of a certain race or species is going to have this character trait, and also quite often good or bad. It's like,
Trope.
why do chromatic dragons have to be evil, and why do metallic dragons have to be good? Why, a red dragon might decide, you know what? I don't think doing that's the right thing to do. What I want to do, I should do right. I should be, I think that's completely feasible, but the setting doesn't allow for it. So the books don't allow for it. I mean, we did close in Dragonlance Chronicles have close to a good red dragon, the old blind one.
Yes.
We thought the kids were her kids.
Yeah, I liked her.
That was borderline good, but technically she was still evil.
Yes.
And it's something part of the nature of Dungeons and Dragons. Which, from what I hear, they're getting away from,
Yeah, they are. Depending on your DM and everything, it's a lot more open these days. So it's not as locked in stone as it used to be at all.
Okay. See, I've been out of the gaming side of it for years. I never looked at 4th edition, never once. And I've only looked at a little bit of 5th edition and some bit more Pathfinder. I'm still a 3.0, 3.5 person, D20 3.5, I think is where it was at. But I love skills. I abuse skills.
What about you, Jen? Did you have anything that, just doesn't age well or sit right?
I would probably say that of all the books, this one probably ages the best to me, just as far as I'll probably get to that in a minute, but themes, lessons learned, that sort of thing. I think it can resonate with a more modern audience today than probably almost anything else. Just kind of a growing up story. That's universal, I think.
For me, I didn't find anything overly worrying or that didn't age well. Like I said, the one thing I come close to is the sort of snatching of Kitiara's soul. But I mean, other than that, which was kind of deserved and we all knew was coming.
Yeah.
I think it was deserved, but it was still wrong.
Yeah.
It was one of those bad, wrong things that the person
it's like,
actually asked
does she
for.
deserve that for eternity? Eternity now. Does it deserve to die eventually?
Remember Stern Brightblade and then ask yourself that question.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, first time I cried reading a book.
All right, yeah. All
Because
right.
she killed him for eternity. So
Well, you know what? Worse than killing him is, well, you don't find that out until later books. So I'm gonna
I know what you're talking about, and I'm like, no,
to Sturm specifically. So I'll just
no.
there's a
So-
lot of stuff she did with Sturm that was wrong. Let's just put it that way. Yeah.
Jen mentioned, some picking up on themes. What sort of themes did you guys pick up on in this series?
Resolution, and that can be good or bad. I just themes would be justice carried out whether the way you want it to or not, and I guess the biggest overarching theme for these three books and to like solidify in this book is what you do is going to like come back to you. Like people get their just desserts and you can't escape your past to a certain point. You can choose to do better if you continue to make the right choices and face your past, but like if you've committed to a wrong course of action, there is only one like Raistlin knew where he was going with his power mongering and his wanting to be a god. Well, that's gonna have potential consequences, and what the consequences are what you've done to everybody. So that's kind of what you had coming for you, and you're gonna have to pay for that. So that's, I think, literally the biggest point of the book is just you reap what you sow, kind of.
I think toxic relationships.
Yeah.
There's
big
not
one.
just the
Absolutely.
toxic
That's it.
relationship between Raistlin and Caramon. There's the toxic relationship between Raistlin and Dalamar, Raistlin and Kitiara and Soth, Raistlin and Chrysania. My goodness, that's just
Yeah.
wow.
Lots of bad.
Yeah, I don't see how that happened, but apparently I don't see how it happened, but apparently someone managed to have a crush on him. So I guess it's not too unrealistic.
I did. Still kind of do.
Yeah.
For me,
I
I'd have to
understand the
say,
attraction to the bad.
for me, I'd have to say probably redemption. We see that arc from both Caramon and Chrysania. Even though there are consequences and they have to go through some horrible stuff, we do see them learn and sort of redeem themselves for past mistakes they made to a point. So redemption, I think, is part, and even Raistlin in the end quasi redeemed himself by, choosing not to end the world.
Yeah. Technically, he
So-
did make a choice. He does.
Yeah,
that
he
does
did.
matter. That
He
matters.
did save. He made
I
a
mean,
sacrifice.
It doesn't to the Dark Queen, but sure.
I don't think his sacrifice fully redeems him, though.
It does
No.
not.
Nothing does.
Well, except for the fact that it goes for eternity. That is a little on the he almost, but no, he was a cold son of a bitch. That's all I know.
Yeah. It was.
Any other themes
I
that
mean,
you
I
may
think
have
we've
missed?
covered most of
Covered
the
it?
themes in the
Yeah.
first two books. This was
Yeah.
just the resolution of those themes. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this book was a lot of what we had to talk about, it happened throughout the entire trilogy. That's why I've been referring to the trilogy a lot instead of just the book.
okay, but how awesome was a Kender and a Gully Dwarf flying the Citadel? That was awesome. Come on.
I want to see that live action so bad.
Yeah,
Oh
that's
my
true.
goodness.
That is true.
Especially when it comes in and then
Yeah, that's funny.
taking all the draconians out.
That is hilarious. Yeah.
Because I want to intercut that with the shot of Tass and did that Gully Dwarf ever get a name? I don't remember.
Yeah.
But Tass and that Gully Dwarf
I don't
inside
remember.
with their hands and feet on the control devices, trying to stay in place as they're upside down, shaking it like that.
That's
I just think
incredible.
that'd be funny to watch.
I would think so too.
Yeah, I just love that
Yeah, yeah.
moment
That was
where
great.
they're trying to drive it, and it's a nice break
I,
from the sort of darkness that is going on everywhere
Yeah.
else.
that's the role of Kender, you
Squick.
know,
Mm-hmm.
as they get you stuff.
Would you recommend this book to younger, older readers, or both?
I'd recommend it to just about anybody, but like the other ones, if it was an older reader I was going to suggest it to, I would give the caveat that it was written probably with a younger, people in mind, 30 and under, I would say, maybe 20 and under, but 30 and under. Um, but yeah, it is, as we talked about, darker and has more, weight to it than the Chronicles. I'll give this trilogy that, and this book especially. You guys?
I'll let Bill go.
Pretty much the same. I'd recommend it to both with caveats and qualifiers for both.
I agree. I would probably say probably not an older reader. Like it depends on like what are you used to reading? And then if they're like way into like some Ursula K. Le Guin kind of like stuff, I'm like, all right, well, take this with the caveat. Like, you know what I mean? This is
Right.
But yeah, I probably wouldn't if somebody's obviously on like obviously Harry Potter, this is way too deep for them, I think. So obviously past the Twilight level of Stephanie Meyer stuff. So I would probably
I haven't
say
read either of those.
somewhere
I've
in the
never read a
middle.
Harry Potter book.
I've read both.
I've read both. Haven't read all the Twilight. I read the first book. I've read most of all the Harry Potter works. Actually, I haven't read all of them. I think I read up to the Order of Phoenix. So only the
I've
fourth
seen
one.
every movie,
Me
but
too.
I've read all
I
of
won't read the
both.
books.
So
I'm sorry.
yeah.
And
I don't
that's not
mind.
so much for the Stephanie Meyer. It's for the Harry Potter. I'm an anti-Harry Potter person now.
Well, now I am, but then at the
Yeah.
time, I think I was like, oh my gosh, I was swept away. I never really was with the Twilight. Twilight was more peer pressure for other girls of the time because I was obviously reading Dragonlance, and Harry Potter at the time had some appeal to me because it was wizard shit, and I'm like, all right, I can get with that. But like even though it was vampires, it was more like a girl falls in love with and I'm like, all right, cool, this sounds like some fanfic shit, which is fine, but I'm like, I know what I'm getting into. But all the girls are like that don't usually read that kind of stuff, like, oh my god, this is the best thing, and I'm like, mid compared to the stuff that I'm reading, but I'll try it out. And it was exactly what it promised, so I don't hold anything against it because it's exactly what it says it was gonna
Originally,
be.
I never read the Harry Potter out of obstinacy because it was like the thing and everybody was reading it.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, but it starts out for kids. I don't want to be reading the kids' book. At the time when it was going out, and I've just been stubborn about it.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't read it. I don't intend to read it unless somebody talks me into it for like to get for YouTube or something like that, or a podcast, and they want me to come on as a guest and have read it. Maybe I'll read it for something like that, but just for myself, no, I'm not going to read Harry Potter.
Yeah,
I'll
would
read more
now.
Dragonlance though. I'll read some more Dragonlance though.
Oh yeah.
All the other stuff.
Well,
There's
we
a lot.
have Dragons of Summer coming up, so
that's going to be a doozy.
Yep.
3 weeks from today, you guys.
What a tonal shift. I got so freaking interested in the Urda after that book. I actually read the book from the Lost Histories, the Urda, after Summerflame, but that's neither here nor there. I was like, that's so crazy. Good ogres. Speaking of alignment, they stepped out of that for the very first time with and actually a Dragonlance certified class, a race. That they are a race and they are different than their brethren. They can't like intermix at all. They're separate.
Ends our discussion. I think that wraps us up. Any last thoughts before we sign off?
It's kind of sad not talking about this before we go to Summer Flame anymore, but I've enjoyed. Thank you both for having me on to talk about these books. It's been a pleasure, and it's always sad to have to re-experience these characters, but it was lovely being able to talk about that with you. So thank you.
Yeah, it is pretty cathartic to because I remember distinctly not having anybody to talk with about these books when I read them as a teen. So it is rather cathartic getting to talk about it as an adult. And I can't thank you enough for coming on for the whole series. We really
Yes,
appreciate that.
Yeah.
we'll have you again next time. You're coming on for Dragons of Summer Flame.
Yes.
That'll be fun to wrap this up, and probably have you on for others books as well.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we'll be talking with Jenn every week over at What the Adaptation. Don't forget to check that out on Tuesdays at 4:30. Thanks for watching. Please give us a like, a subscribe. Please leave some comments. And hey, don't forget to be awesome.